Hi, I'm back with another one of my Disney couples rankings. This would be number two. So we have my Happily Ever After Disney book that has different snippets or different things in regards to different Disney couples and such like that. I was trying to see if I could find any in regards to any quotes that talked about couples I was going to talk about today. And I couldn't really find any, unfortunately. I kind of found one that references back to it because this is going to be a list about Disney animal couples, where I rank all the different Disney animal couples, including the kind of quote unquote anthropomorphic ones like Robin Hood and Maid Marian, and some others that fall on the list because they're animals. Um, Mickey and Minnie and Daisy and Donald are not on this list. I'm going to take the glasses off. Are not on this list. They are on a different list. They're on my miscellaneous couples list because whereas they are slightly anthropomorphic animals, I had 13 couples on this list already, and I figured I wanted to give Mickey and Minnie and Daisy and Donald a little bit more of time for me to talk about them than just, snippets here. So one of the couples I did kind of find that's at least mentioned in the book is this is obviously Pongo and the puppies from 101 Dalmatians, and Pongo and Gordita are on this list. They're a bit of a ways up the list. This mostly has a lot of the different human couples and such, which will be very useful, which are very useful for my Disney princess couples list. So let's get going on this. As I said, there are 13 couples on this list, all of which are different animal couples. And so starting with the list, we have Duchess and Thomas O'Malley from the Aristocats. Obviously, just because the couples are like at the bottom of this list or whatever, that doesn't mean that I don't like them. Any couple that are on these lists, I love the couple to some degree. If I didn't like the couple, they wouldn't be on the list, because it's like these are my favorite ones. So why wouldn't I? If I don't like them, they wouldn't be on the list. So as I said, we have Duchess and O'Malley. And they, of course, meet partway through the beginning, partway through the movie. They meet after, Duchess and the kittens are, kind of kidnapped and then abandoned, slash lost by, a creme de la creme a la Edgar incident, when Edgar does that. And then, of course, O'Malley agrees to help them. He sees Duchess and he's just kind of instantly infatuated with her, obviously. And it's, it's the very high society aristocratic girl meets the from the wrong side of the tracks type of guy, which is a trope that Disney has done multiple times with multiple different relationships, obviously. Lady and the Tramp being another very obvious one. But it's very much this concept of, they're, they kind of start this bit of a, flirtation to a degree. And then, O'Malley, sees the kittens and he agrees to help them get back to Paris and get back to their home. And of course, they go on this fun adventure where he proves that he's actually very good with children. And, we have the fun number where, everybody wants to be a cat, which has this, Duchess and O'Malley flirting more and more throughout the whole trip that they took to get to Paris. And, the night before he's supposed to take them back to their home, he's, him and Duchess are talking, and he's just you could stay here with me and everything, and, we could be together type of a thing. And she's just but I have to go back to Madame and everything. And, from what we see, I mean, it would be one thing if, if Duchess and the kittens came from a very abusive household, then they probably wouldn't be trying to get back to the household. But from everything that we see, Madame loves the Duchess and the kittens and everything, and loves Frou Frou, and she cares about Edgar a lot too. But Edgar just gets very greedy, and that's the whole impetus of the movie is Edgar getting very, very greedy and wanting the money. And so it makes sense for why Duchess and the kittens want to go back. They have this very good life. They have an owner that loves them and adores them and takes very good care of them. And, but, you can see that Duchess's heart's kind of, torn between wanting to go and wanting to stay. And, the kittens are kind of okay with O'Malley at this point in time. They initially have a little bit of hesitation with him. Well, Berlus and Tullio do. Marie is very much already instantly like, hi, like, very instantly like, are you to marry our mom type of thing. Um, but of course, he takes them back to the house and he says goodbye to them and everything. And then, of course, when they're captured again by Edgar, he, then, Rupert the mouse goes out and gets O'Malley and tells him to go back. And O'Malley shows up and he's like fighting against Edgar to try to stop him from, mailing Duchess and the kittens to Timbuktu. And of course, we have that whole fighting sequence, between him and the alley cat, between Edgar and Thomas, helped by the alley cats and everything. And they get the kittens and Duchess out, and Edgar's the one that gets sent off to Timbuktu. And of course, through that, we have, then it's, O'Malley is kind of, welcomed into the family and everything. And like, Madame has no idea what happened. Just like, Edgar just ran away, I guess, type of thing. I'm like, okay, well, you better hire a new butler that really likes your cats, type of thing. And of course, O'Malley is then, made part of the family and everything. And, we get them, he's kind of, the stepfather to the triplet, to the three kittens and everything. And, him and Duchess and, him and Duchess get along great at that point in time, of course, and they're able to be together. So I do like that romance. It's a very sweet type of romance to a degree. And then we have the next one on the list for animal couples. We have a dinosaur couple. We have Aladar and Nira from Dinosaur that came out in 2000. Duchess and, O'Malley are from 1970 with the Aristocats there. And Aladar and Nira are, of course, two iguanodon. And throughout the course of the movie, it's like they meet and initially they, she doesn't like him type of thing. She thinks that he's kind of a jerk or a flirt, play dinosaur type of thing. And, eventually that does change because she sees the way that he interacts with the two younger iguanodon that she's kind of been looking after. And she sees the way that he like stands up to her brother. And we have like this like cute moment where it's like he helps her get water out of the lake bed. So that way she's not thirsty anymore after he helped the two young ones get water. And like, that's where their flirtation kind of starts. And of course, what ends up happening is, during the climax of the movie, they're separated by her brother, Bruton, who is, of course, I think Bruton's is Crone her brother. Crone or Bruton, I can never remember which one. The guy that's leading the herd is her brother. And he's very protective of her, which given the time that they're in, I don't blame him for being protective of her. He's a good brother in that instance, but he's much too controlling. And much to my way or the highway type of thing when it comes to him. But Nira and Aladar, of course, during the climax of the movie, Aladar and the other dinosaurs that he'd been traveling with, the older group and his, lemur relatives, they're safely within like this valley that'll keep them safe, or the mating grounds where they were trying to go to. And he goes out around the mating grounds to get to where the rest of the herd is, so that way they don't, climb over the steep rock wall and fall to their doom. And, he shows up and he fights against the carnivores that are there. And, Nira chooses to go with him because she sees that Aladar as being much more, protective of the herd than her brother was, and much better protection. And, unfortunately, Crone does die, or Bruton, whichever one. Her brother does die. I can't remember which one was her brother, if it was Crone or Bruton, because there's two of them, and one's very always associated with the other. And, by the end of the movie, they've made it into the, nesting grounds and everything. And like her brother has like sacrificed himself to like kind of stop the carnivores and everything. They defeated the carnivores. And, we cut to the end of the movie and, it's after the breeding season. And, like they've all laid their eggs and like the baby iguanodon, all the baby dinosaurs are hatching. And, Nira and Aladar now have like little baby iguanodons that they get to raise in their little family and everything, which is adorable. I like Dinosaur. I think they did a very good job with it. I don't necessarily think there's ever really going to be any other huge amounts of references to Dinosaur and anything else, but I enjoy it. Next up, number 11 on my list, we have Bambi and Feline from Bambi that came out in 1942. And they were kind of Disney's original animal couple to a degree, which I just find adorable because it was within like those first 5 Disney movies that we had Bambi. And because it goes, yeah, it's in the first five because it goes Snow White, Pinocchio, uh, Fantasia, Bambi, and Dumbo. I believe the order that they came out in. And yes, the Disney expert is not sure. But what we see with Bambi and Feline is they initially meet when they're fawns, and Feline is very like flirtatious with him anyway, and very teasing of him and everything, and they kind of play a little bit. And we get to see a little bit more of their relationship in Bambi 2, which is the sequel that came out in like the early 2000s. That shows a little bit more of the time frame between when Bambi's mother died and when we see him come back when he's full grown as a full grown buck and everything, in like the spring, which is I think like a little while later. But like so we see a little bit more of their relationship during that time frame with him like kind of flirting with her and trying to impress her a little bit, but we also have this other fawn there that keeps causing problems for Feline and Bambi and for the other people the other animals that live in the forest. He keeps causing problems there for them. And what ends up happening is, of course, at the end of the movie, we have this adorable bit where like Bambi shows up and he's starting to lose his spots, and it's like his little antlers are starting to come in. And via incident, Bambi and Feline kind of end up kissing a little bit, which is just adorable. And so we see them flirting, and then and then like by technicality in the timeline, then it would cut to like the next spring or whatever, when Bambi and Feline are both full grown, and we of course have the whole Twitter pated sequence where we have Thumper and the other female rabbit, and Flower and the female, skunk that go off, and then Bambi finds Feline and everything, and like he's just like after a couple of seconds after she licks him, kisses him, he's just like instantly smitten with her, which is adorable. And of course, then he has to fight this other buck, which the buck that he fights in the movie is supposed to be the same buck that we see as as a fawn in Bambi 2. I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. Don't really care. But so it's supposed to be that same buck. And when they fight over Feline, and of course Bambi wins. And then of course, we have the Love is a Song That Never Ends sequence where we have Bambi and Feline, and kind of just showing like some more of the beauty of nature and of the forest and everything. And then of course he protects her when the hunter's dogs show up and everything. And then of course they have to get out of the fire. And then of course we cut to the end of the movie where Feline and Bambi, it's like the next spring or so, and Bambi is now kind of taken up his role as like the young prince of the forest, and alongside his father. And Feline and Bambi have two fawns of their own. I cannot remember their names off the top of my head. They are given at one point in time in like other media or whatever, but I don't remember what they're called. But Bambi and Feline, I just kind of find them this very adorable romance. And like with animals, I'm a little okay with them trying to pull off the whole, a little bit more inclined to like instinct side of things when it comes to animals and romance. That doesn't mean that like I care that much for when they pull that off in humans, where it's like, I've stated this before, love at first sight. Okay, maybe there can be such a thing, but, and it's not because like I haven't experienced that I say that this doesn't exist, but love at first sight in regards to like falling in love with someone at first sight. Love at first sight when it comes to like holding your child or something like that, that's a little bit of a different issue, I would say. But love at first sight when it comes to falling in love with someone, I can understand infatuation at first sight. That happens a lot. I can understand, instant attraction to someone at first sight to a degree. But, don't base the relationship off of just, oh, I met you once and now I am destined to be with you for the rest of eternity. Yeah. But Bambi and Feline, I just they have a very sweet little relationship that they show there. Next up on the list, we have Scamp and Angel from Lady and the Tramp 2: Scamp's Adventure, that came out in 2001. Lady and the Tramp are also on this list, but they're higher up. So Scamp is Lady and the Tramp's son. We see him along with his three sisters at the end of the first movie. I don't know if they ever end up giving them names at the end of the first movie, or at least not in the movie itself. They don't, but I don't know if there's like other like little storybooks that they had afterwards where they say the names of all of them. But Scamp, Tramp makes sense. And he, Scamp is this very much causes trouble around the house, very much wants to be, much more of this, street type dog and everything, where his sisters are very okay with being, house dogs. And, Scamp goes through the whole phase where it's like he doesn't know that his father had been like the king of all street dogs type of thing, the best of the best. And, we have that whole, that's part of the process of the movie, is that he learns that, Tramp had been this amazing house dog and that he gave it up for Lady, which is something I'll be going over in their section of the video a little bit more. But Scamp and Angel meet because Scamp is, of course, tied up in the backyard because he had been causing trouble in the house. And I like that Jim Deere and Darling's punishment for him is not, a horrible thing of like, denying him food or anything like that. They just chain him up in the backyard, and it's not like it's like in the middle of winter or anything like that. It's like around the 4th of July, so it's like it's nice outside. He can go in the doghouse if it's too sunny. He can, reach other areas of the yard where there's shade. There's water out there for him, so he's not thirsty. It's not like this horrible over the top punishment. But Lady or Angel and the other junkyard dogs show up, and like they're like teasing the dog catcher and everything, and Scamp and Angel kind of end up having this flirtatious moment at one point, and then like he breaks out of the backyard and goes after them, chases after them, and he finds Angel in an alley, and they have this whole thing where she's just like teasing him about she's like showing off that she knows how to get around in an alley, and he like ends up making a complete fool of himself by getting covered in garbage and everything. And she teases him about his collar and everything, and he follows her back to the junkyard, and he kind of spends part of the movie just trying to like impress her and impress the rest of the junkyard dogs, but she keeps looking at him going, it's like, you came from home, why aren't you in your home, type of thing. Why are you here? Like she keeps trying to kind of like reverse psychology him to go home, because she knows that he has this home that he should be able to go back to. And he's just like, no, I can't do what I want there. I'm stuck in the house and it's horrible and everything. And what ends up happening is, of course, after Scamp is he has like kind of proved himself a little bit to the rest of the junkyard dogs. Him and Angel have like this very nice, fun, like little romantic sequence. And I put their romance as kind of more under like puppy love type of a thing, because literally they are puppies. And neither of them are full grown yet at this point in time. They're very much just like puppy love type of thing. That's just like, the adorable love of just like two young people who, are infatuated with each other. Very sweet type of love. Put it as, oh, they go and have dinner every now and then, and they buy each other small gifts and different things like that type of a thing. It's like the equation to that in like human society, the promise ring type of thing. It's kind of the equivalent of that. But, what we see happen is, of course, Scamp and Angel have this like little romantic sequence that I cannot remember the name of the song, unfortunately. But they go around and they have just like this fun time where they're kind of like falling in love, and like they do like the recreation of like the spaghetti dinner sequence between him and Angel that like of course his parents had in the original movie, but like he doesn't know that. And like they it starts off sweet, and then it just goes into puppies just like devouring spaghetti, which is adorable, and like getting spaghetti sauce and noodles everywhere, but still them being adorable. And of course, them just roaming around and having a nice time. And then, of course, when it's revealed that Scamp is Tramp's son, and, Angel sees that, Scamp came from this, this very loving home, with his parents that loved him and his sisters and like two, owners and a kid that loved him and missed him very, very much. Because like for the last like 2-ish days or so that like Scamp has been out, Lady and Tramp and, Jim Deere and, Jock and Trusty have been out looking for him. and, probably calling the pound every so often to see if he's been brought in or anything like that. And, because they really want him to come home because they love him and everything. And, Angel ends up berating Scamp for the fact of just like, you left this home, this great home, all because you think that it's better to be able to run around and have to scrounge for your own food. And she just kind of gives him a bit of a reality check. And we get this moment where she reveals it was just like, I had a home, but, I had a home at one point and it was great. And I had people that cared for me. And then they got a new baby, or someone had an allergy, or they moved, and I got left on the sidelines. I had to be taken back to the pound, or I had to be taken back here, or whatever. And I eventually just ran away because I just, no one else is going to take care of me except for me. And, that's just one of those moments where it's like Tramp kind of does realize the value of what he had back home with his parents and with his sisters and with the, the Jim Deere and Darling family and with Junior. And, throughout the rest of the movie, it's, Scamp and Angel have this bit of a very hard hard issue with each other. And what ends up happening is after, Tramp is or Scamp is accepted as a junkyard dog and they rip off his collar and everything, he ends up getting tricked and by Spike, who's the, it's Spike. Yeah. I was going to say Duke, but that's not right. I believe Spike is the name of the other junkyard dog. That's the king of the junkyard dogs. And he ended up, of course, getting Tramp sent to the, pound and everything. And Angel runs back to where, to where Tramp's home is, and like grabs Tramp and like takes him to the pound where Scamp is. So that way they can break Scamp out and everything. And of course, when they get back to the house that morning, it's, the Jim Deere and Darling like see Angel and like, it's like, did you help our little Scamp and everything out on those hard streets and everything? And it's just this adorable thing that they have. And like, she of course ends up getting accepted into the family after all of the dogs give Jim Deere the giant puppy dog eyes of, it's like, we can't have any more dogs. All of them staring at him, Jacques and Trusty included, with all, just like, but she helped Scamp type of thing, just like staring at him with the big puppy dog eyes. Just like, oh my God, one human can only take so many puppy dog eyes at any given time. And he just like breaks and he's just like, fine, she can stay. And that works out really well. And of course she's welcomed in the family and everything. Next up on the list, we have Vixie and Todd, the foxes from The Fox and the Hound that came out in 1981, excuse me. And Vixie and Todd are, of course, these, the two adorable foxes. Todd's backstory, he, was adopted by this, widow woman, and she, widow farmer, and she raised him. And then, like, because of issues with the next door neighbor, of course, with him being a hunter, and with Todd unfortunately causing problems with Copper and, all of that, she has to take him to the nature preserve so that way he can be, safe there. And that whole sequence of her like taking him to the nature preserve is just one of the saddest sequences in all of Disney movies. Maybe someday I'll have to go through and do like the saddest moments in Disney movies. One of them, when she has to leave Todd at the that whole section where she's like driving there and we have like the sad song or kind of speech in the background. But Todd gets to the, she takes Todd to the wildlife refuge and leaves him there. And then he has not had a fun night with everything, and he ends up like kind of getting his spirit's kind of broken and everything the next morning because he had to deal with a very mean badger and then like a very nice hedgehog or very nice porcupine type of thing, but still not that good to deal with at the time. And it didn't go well. And then like Big Mama shows up and she like goes and she finds Vixie, who is it's a play on vixen, which is the term for like a female fox. And she finds Vixie and she's like, oh, well, there's like this fox here, a young, male fox and everything. And she's just like, Big Mama also instantly gets the idea of like, set them up. And she does. And she like takes Vixie and she's like, you sit here and just look up. And then she like goes and she gets Todd and she like dusts him off and everything. And then like they interact. And it's just adorable, like how they interact for the first time. And then Todd tries to impress Vixie by fishing, and he makes a complete fool out of himself, which is just hilarious. Um, and but he gets very angry at her because she's laughing at him and everything. And they have like this fight, and then of course he just like we have Big Mama singing in the background and everything, and he just like Todd kind of relents and he picks a flower and he takes it to Vixie and he like gives her the flower as like an apology. And we have this, this whole moment there that happens. And then, Vixie and Todd, like they get their relationship a little bit better. And, they kind of walk around and she's like, they see like the little baby quails or whatever. And she's like, I think 6 would be a good number. And he's like, 6 what? She's like, 6 children, six little puppies, 6 little cubs. And he's just like, 6 type of thing. And we get to when the hunter and Copper show up at the preserve. And Todd of course ends up saving the hunter's life and Todd's life, or Copper's life, after the whole running around and everything and dealing with the bear and everything. He saves them, and then Copper then saves Todd from the hunter and everything. And of course, at the end of the movie, we see that Todd and Vixie are still together and everything. And like they kind of had made their way to where like the 2 farms are to like kind of see what's going on. And then like they head back to the preserve, I would assume. But we just like this sweet little, relationship that they have between the 2 of them. And like Vixie doesn't have a problem with like telling Todd what she thinks, which is adorable. Next up on the list, we have number 8. We have Pongo and Perdita. So yeah, we got our 101 Dalmatians from 1961. I've always loved Pongo and Perdita. I always find them to be just adorable couple. They're based on, of course, the books. Based on books by, I cannot remember the name of the author, and I apologize. But in the books, Perdita was just referred to as Mrs. Pongo, or the Mrs., or Mrs. And in the movie, Disney was the one that decided to call her Perdita instead. But, of course, the whole plot of the movie is, of course, Pongo, he's trying to find a woman for, Roger, and he sees, all these other, human, females and dogs walking by. None of them catch his eye except for the poodle. And then he sees Perdita. And then he sees Anita, and she's like, oh, she'll work for Roger. This will be good. And then, of course, we have the whole moment where they, they meet, and, Pongo kind of causes some problems between Anita and Roger, and they get dropped into the lake, and they get all wet and everything. And then they have, to result in, whatever else of, flirting with each other ends up happening. And, Pongo and Perdita, they kind of get together because of that and everything. I mean, like Pongo wanted them to get together too, but they get together. And of course we have like the wedding ceremony where we have Anita and Roger getting married, but we also have like Pongo and Perdita getting married, which is adorable. And then of course we cut to just like a short while later, and like we have like Perdita and Pongo talking about the fact that Perdita is going to have puppies and everything. And we have these adorable moments between Pongo and Perdita where they're like on the windowsill, they're like resting on the windowsill, like what Rainy does here every now and then, really like have his head resting on the windowsill. I've been working from home. Oh God. And he's been like, he'll come in here every now and then and like lay down on the bed and like pop his head on the windowsill as he like watches out the window while I'm, working. But, like they have this cute moment together. And then the other adorable thing that happens, which is like, it comes off of a sad moment, but it's still adorable, is when like Cruella talks about like wanting to take the puppies and everything. And, Perdita, we cut to like, Perdita is like hiding in the kitchen underneath the stove or the heater or whatever. And like Pongo comes in and he like, kind of like, goes underneath there. And he like, he licks her cheek and everything. And she's just, she's just like, that devil woman's going to take our puppies. And he's just like, no, our humans wouldn't let that happen, type of a thing. And he's right. Anita and Roger would do their best to not let that happen, of course. But like he is very, very like trying to calm her down and everything that I just find adorable. And of course we have when Pongo and and Perdita is having the puppies, and like Pongo is just sitting there like very worried, but like Roger is also worried and everything, which is just adorable. So it's just like, Roger, you're not the one becoming a parent. It's Pongo that's going to be a dad. But it's just like that adorable scene where it's like the very nervous father type of a thing. And like Pongo seems to be a little bit more calm, but he's still very like jittery a little bit. And of course, after Perdita has the puppies and everything, and like Roger tells off Cruella and everything, he goes in and we have the adorable moment of them with the puppies, when they're all newborn. And then we cut to a couple of weeks later or so with like the puppies all having their spots and them just having fun in front of the TV and everything. And like we just still see like Perdita and Pongo like kind of not bickering like a married couple or anything like that, but just kind of like jabbing at each other, which is adorable. And like the puppies jabbing at their parents, which is funny too. And then of course we have the whole moment when of course the whole sequence where it's just like, oh no, the puppies got taken, and then of course Pongo and Perdita use the Twilight Bark, and then of course they make their way through to DeVille Manor, and we have the moment where they just look like demons straight out of hell when they're just like, okay, Seamus and Horace took our children, now we're going to find a way to like eat their souls type of moment, where they're just like type of moment, which is just scary mommy and daddy. But it's just like, you took our puppies, you were going to get extremely painful very quickly, extreme pain very quickly. And of course, they get the puppies back and everything, but it's just like, they still have this adorable kind of, interaction with each other. And I think I think it was 101 Dalmatians to Scamp's London Adventure or whatever, like we see a little bit more of Pongo and Perdita. And if I remember correctly, throughout the course of the animated series that they had, that was just like takes place after the first movie, or like after the rough time frame of the second movie, but like after the first movie, where they're like on they got a hold of DeVille Manor and everything, and that got turned into their Dalmatian plantation type of thing. That we still get some moments where we see Pongo and Perdita together, and kind of the end button on that is there had been another animated series that was called 101 Dalmatian Street. There's a motorcycle in our neighborhood. I apologize if you can hear that. Go away. And it's the 101 Dalmatians Street is like takes place like kind of modern day in London, and like some of the puppies that are in the show are like the great whatever grandchildren of Pongo and Perdita, and we see a picture of Pongo and Perdita framed in like the background at some point, or like in the foreground at some point, and it's just this nice picture of them to show like it's gone a long way, like their family lineage is like carrying on. Next up, we have a couple that technically starts out as human but ends as animal, so I put them in here, are Kenai and Nita from Brother Bear 2, which came out in 2006. So of course we know the whole story in regards to Kenai and Brother Bear. The first one is that he's very headstrong boy, just came of age and everything, and goes through this whole trial where he has to learn what's really important, and of course he ends up becoming a bear, and becoming the brother to this this younger bear that needs a parent after he's the one that like kills said parent. And we have that moment that all happens in that movie. The second movie, which I did go over in when I did the Brother Bear stuff, Nita was like the childhood friend of Kenai's from a different tribe, or from a different village or so. And what ended up happening was, when they were children, apparently they kind of unbeknownst to each other made this like kind of pact between the two of them, where like he gave her a necklace, and then like they carved they doodled on like a cave wall of like two people next to each other, I guess underneath like the Aurora Borealis, and I guess by the decree of the gods that qualifies as, oh, they either will be married, like this is a marriage promise, or whatever the case may be, or they are married now. And, this takes place after, like, Kenai saved her from, like, drowning, and, drowning at one point. He saved her and everything. And we cut to so many years later, and she's supposed to be getting married again, but on the day of the wedding, there's, like, this big earthquake that happens that literally has a crack that appears between her and the guy that she's engaged to, which is not Kenai. And she has to go on this whole, Nita has to go on this whole adventure of, like, find Kenai, and they have to take the necklace that he gave her to, like, the peak where the lights touch the earth or so, or take the necklace to where they made the vow and, like, burn the necklace when the lights are high in the sky. And, like, so she's like given the ability to, like, talk to animals, and, like, she goes off and she finds him, and, like, he initially does not care, because it's just like, okay, fine, I don't care if you can't get married, that doesn't affect me. And eventually, she does end up convincing him. Well, Coda kind of convinces him too, to go, and they go on this adventure, and, like, they kind of slowly reconnect, and they have these moments where, like, she ends up revealing that she's terrified of water, because since she's been a child, she's very, very brave, but, like, water is, like, her fear, because she, like, almost drowned when she was a child, and she just has these issues with it, and it causes other issues as they're traveling with each other. But what ends up happening is they do end up having this nice sequence where we have the two of them getting a little bit more familiar with each other. Like, kind of, he helps her with her fear of the water, so that way she's not as terrified of it and everything. And, this causes issues with Coda, but, like, she still shows that she cares about Coda as well. And, like, she kind of explains, it's like the moment of, once you love someone, they're in your heart forever type of a thing. Because, like, her and Coda kind of bond over the fact that they've both kind of lost their mothers. And they also have interactions with the moose and, like, the Rut and Took. And, like, Rut and Took are kind of, like, trying to flirt with these two female moose. And, like, Kenai tries to figure out a way to, like, help impress the female moose, but that doesn't work. So then Nita is the one that actually kind of comes up with a way to help them impress the female moose. And, like, that works better. Her idea works a lot better than Kenai's did. And, like, that's just funny. So they have, like, small arguments about that, but they do show that they are getting better with each other. And what ends up happening is they get to where they're supposed to go to burn the necklace, and they get there, and they do burn the necklace, and it kind of, like, is supposed to symbolize, like, the breaking of that bond or the breaking of that promise. And then she can't talk to the animals anymore, so then she goes back home, and she's getting ready to marry the other guy that she's initially supposed to marry. And Coda ends up having this moment where he had initially thought that, like, if Kenai falls in love with Nita and she stays with us, or he'll go with her instead, he'll stop, he'll want to be a human again instead of being a bear. And then, I won't have my brother anymore. So it's kind of this moment where he's very sad about that. But then he still makes the decision of, I want Kenai to be happy, and he, runs into the village during the wedding and everything, and, like, Kenai's chasing after them, and the moose and the female moose are, like, chasing after Kenai as well, and, like, causing havoc in the village at the time. And Nita actually ends up via the resolution of the film is that Nita chooses, because she realizes that she loves Kenai as well, and she chooses that she wants to be with him. And to do that, Kenai could become human again, and they could be together, but then Coda would be on his own again. And she doesn't want to do that to Coda, because she cares for Coda as well. So she makes the decision of, I will become, becoming a bear. And, she says goodbye to her father and everything. And, like, the guy she was supposed to marry is, like, watching off in the background, like, I lost to a bear. Okay, sure, fine. Yeah, I can't argue with the Northern Lights and the Great Spirits. I can't argue with them. He's, like, off in the background having that, like, existential crisis. But Nita chooses to become a bear, and they have this funny joke where she's just like, how do I look? And he's like, you look great as a bear, except they gave you antlers. What? Just, like, adorable moment between the two of them. Of course, they're married in front of the village and everything. And the moose are there, and like Coda's there and everything. They have this this adorable little wedding ceremony, of course. And we haven't gotten any continuation on that as far as I'm aware in either books or anything else, because we haven't gotten any other movies or anything like that for Brother Bear. I'd like it if they did, but I highly doubt they're going to. But so we have them. Next up, it's like my part of that is that like she chooses to give up, not giving up her humanity, but giving up her ability to be a human to be with Kenai, because she can't make him choose to leave Coda, because Coda still needs Kenai. Next up, we have Bernard and Bianca from 1977's The Rescuers / The Rescuers Down Under, that came out in the late 80s, early 90s, if I remember correctly. I want to say 1990, but I don't think that's correct. But what we see is Bernard and Bianca, of course, have this adorable relationship of like the good-natured, very shy man, and the woman who is very beautiful and very popular and everything, but also very sweet type of thing. And like it's Bob Newhart and Zsa Zsa Gabor, or no, yeah, Zsa Zsa Gabor. Ava Gabor, not Zsa Zsa, Ava Gabor. It's like the two of them kind of falling in love with each other as mice, which is adorable. Of course, the whole premise of the movie is, there's this organization of like mice around the world that help, humans and other animals and everything. And they get this, message in a bottle from a girl that needs help. And, Bernard and Bianca, or Bianca is the one that's sent, and she chooses Bernard to have come and help her because he's not a full-on agent, and she chooses to have him come and help her on the mission. And, throughout the course of the mission, we just see kind of them slowly he has a crush on her at the beginning of it, but like he's like very, fumbling with his words at times and everything like that, but he's very, gentlemanly to her and everything like that. And like they do have some small snips where they do kind of fight a little bit, but it's okay. It's nothing major. And like we do kind of get this like little adorable moment where it's during the moment where they're flying down from New York down to the bayous. It's like Louisiana, Georgia area. That area where the bayous are, where they're flying down there on top of an albatross that has issues, but they're flying down there, and like it's just an adorable little sequence where it's just like there's the song going in the background, but like we have like Bianca kind of like falls asleep on Bernard, and it's adorable. And so we have that cute thing, and then like at the end of the movie they're kind of a little bit more of a couple. And then at the next movie, in Rescuers Down Under, we have the moment where it's like at the beginning of the movie, Bernard is trying to figure out how to propose to Bianca, and he's got like they're at like this very nice restaurant that they really, really like to go to, and he's trying to figure out how to propose to her. He's got the ring already and everything, and like he just kind of keeps getting interrupted type of thing. Not going exactly the way that it's supposed to go with regards to the proposal. And then they end up having to go to Australia to help the kid that needs help. And they end up meeting this, this bush mouse. And, he's the bush mouse is, of course, flirting with Bianca the entire time. But she's very nice to him back. But she probably realizes that he's flirting with her to a degree. But she loves Bernard, so she doesn't care that the other guy is flirting with her, that the other mouse is flirting with her. And Bernard tries multiple times to try to propose to her, but it doesn't go well any of the times. And at various points, Bernard has to like assert himself over the other animals in order to get them to work the way that he needs them to work, to be able to help Bianca and everything. And at the end of the movie, he does finally get the chance to propose to her, and of course she says yes, which is adorable. And I have no idea if they did anything else with like any other media in regards to like books or anything like that, or like I don't think I saw anything that had Bianca and Bernard like actually like getting married, but I just kind of like to think that they got married, and like they continued their rescuing of children all over the world that need help. Just adorable. Next up, we have the reason for the shirt. We have Simba and Nala. And we have Simba and Nala over here in plushie form. We also have Simba and Nala in plastic doll form that I have had for... Sorry. That I have had for a very long time. And we have one other thing. So backstory on this before I show it to you. When I was in middle school, I was either 7th or 8th grade, and I took as many art classes as I could when I was in middle school and high school and such because I loved art. Had other requisites today I had to get out of the way, but I took as many art classes as I could. And we had to like find a picture of something and then like draw it and kind of like try to recreate it a little bit. And I picked, for all intents and purposes, this picture from The Lion King. I did not have the shirt at the time. I just found a different picture from The Lion King that was Simba and Nala, and then I drew it. And this was the result. This thing is a good over 10 years old at this point in time, probably closer to like, 14, 15 years old at this point in time. I proudly can say I did draw Nala, I believe, entirely on my own. But the teacher had to help me a little bit with getting the proportions right for Simba. But I was very proud of this when I drew it. And like when I colored it in and everything. Because, The Lion King has always just been one of my favorite Disney movies. And like Simba and Nala, they're in my top 5 of Disney animal couples and everything. So, I had to dig that out to show it to you because it felt appropriate. So, of course, we all know like the main story for The Lion King in regards to Simba and Nala themselves is that they are, childhood best friends. There's a lot of theories in regards to the background as to whether or not they are technically related, but in the context of the movie, they are not related. So we will just go with the context of the movie, not bringing in the way lions actually work. But Simba and Nala are kind of, best friends. Their mothers are best friends, and, they like to get into trouble and everything and like to go on adventures with each other. And, Nala's always able to pin Simba whenever they do their play fighting and everything, which is adorable. And, according to Zazu, it's so nice to see the two of you getting along so well, considering that you are, betrothed and not... What? Betrothed, intended, affianced. One day you two are going to be married. Simba and Nala, I can't marry her. She's my best friend, type thing. And that whole sequence. And of course they get along great during the I just can't wait to be king sequence and everything, with like getting away from Zazu and everything. And they kind of bicker with each other a little bit. And of course when they get when they're in the elephant graveyard, when they get attacked by the hyenas, Simba does what he can to try to put like himself between Nala and the hyenas in order to protect them, or in order to protect Nala. And, Mufasa shows up, otherwise Simba and Nala would have been eaten. And I'm not bringing in anything from the live action movie into this because I was trying to stick with mainly just what's in the animated stuff that we see. Animated continuity, not the live action continuity, because we get a little bit more with stuff in the live action, but I just wanted to stick with the animated stuff, which is pretty much a rule I'm sticking to when it comes to pretty much most of these characters. In regards to their interactions with each other, or in regards to most of the couples and everything on these lists. But what we of course see happen is, of course, when Simba is kind of exiled, supposedly killed, died in the wildebeest accident and everything, and Scar takes over and everything, Nala is of course as distraught as everybody else that Mufasa is dead and Simba appears to be dead and everything. And like for the next however many months, year, whatever it is, that Scar is in control. At some point, Nala, is able to like leave and find help and everything because she sees the way that Scar is just like destroying the Pride Lands. And she goes, and of course she ends up finding her way into the kind of like oasis jungle area where of course Simba, Timon, and Pumbaa live. And, her and Simba end up like fighting, and then he's like, Nala, after she pins him, and then of course they have the whole, oh my god, it's you, how are you alive? I thought you were dead, what are you doing here? That whole sequence and everything where we have the two of them together. and explaining, Nala explains to Timon and Pumbaa that, oh, Simba's the prince or the king, and all, everything that goes along with that and everything. And of course we have the can you feel the love tonight sequence between the two of them that is beautifully done in the original movie, and then they get kind of like a slight spoof other angles of it from the Lion King 1.5 with Timon and Pumbaa, which is just one of the very few sequences in that movie that I actually like, where we have Simba and Nala and that, which in the Lion King 1.5, it's Timon and Pumbaa are actually trying again and again and again to try to like break up Simba and Nala, but it just makes things more romantic around them. And of course, they have that whole sequence and everything, but Simba and Nala, of course, they have the big fight about like, you have to come back because you're the rightful king and Scar's making things horrible and has been, and if you don't come back, everyone's going to die type of thing. And, Simba eventually, Nala runs off, whatever, and like, Simba goes through the whole emotional ghost experience between his father and him and Rafiki and everything that he has. That whole I'm gonna talk to the stars that look like my dad sequence. And of course he chooses to go back, and of course Nala and Timon and Pumbaa of course follow him. And of course he's just like, if nobody's gonna fight for this kingdom, then if I don't fight for this kingdom, then who will? Nala, I will. And of course they choose that. And of course, they defeat Scar and everything. And, Simba and Nala, are, Simba is now the king and then Nala is queen. And, at the end of the movie, they have like the little baby that's Kiara. And throughout the course of the second movie of Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, we have, of course, a little bit more. We see like their relationship is obviously continued and everything. And like Simba is still, Nala is still a little bit flirty with Simba at times. And throughout the course of the animated series that they had, that was Lion King Simba's Pride, which focuses much more on like Simba and Nala's son Kion, we still see Simba and Nala there, and we still see Kiara there and everything. And I've watched the whole series, and I really, really like it. Kion and Ronnie, as I believe his mate's name by the end of the series, they are not on this list just because I haven't been around this couple enough to develop a huge emotional attachment to them. I'm still happy that they're there, but they haven't been around enough for me to develop that emotional attachment to them that I have to the other couples on this list. But what we have is, of course, Simba and Nala are still very much in love during the course of those sequences and everything. And like we see little snippets of their marriage and everything. Next up on the list, we have our anthropomorphic couple to a degree. We have Robin Hood and Maid Marian as foxes from the 1973 Robin Hood movie. I've always been a fan of the Robin Hood legend and everything, and that like when it comes to like Robin Hood and Maid Marian in the legend, it's usually she's the niece or something, or like a member or a high enough ranking member of like the royal family that she lives in the castle and is around Prince John quite a bit. In some cases it's he wants to marry her, or the Sheriff of Nottingham wants to marry her, or whatever the case may be. Go with whatever lore you want to go to with that. In regards to that. So that's just hilarious. But what we see, of course, for this version of them in the Disney version is that, it's stated that they were friends when they were children before he became, Robin Hood, Robin the Hood, Robin of the Hood, became this, bandit that steals from the rich to give to the poor and everything. And she had been this, young lady that lived at the castle, and like they had been friends before she had gone off to go to like, I guess, finishing school or whatever it is she went to go and do. And they have this very nice relation, their nice friendship and everything. Like we see that he like carved their names, Robin Hood, Maid Marian on the tree and everything with a heart around it and an arrow. And we see in the movie, we see that she has one of his wanted posters up in her closet, and she just like kind of dreamily looks at it. And then of course we have him like dreamily, thinking about her when he's like trying to make dinner and it burns dinner and everything, which is adorable. But of course, when they end up, the when Friar Tuck shows up and says, oh, well, the prize for the archery tournament is a kiss from Maid Marian. Robin's like, oh, I have to do that because Prince John knows that Robin Hood can't resist a kiss from Maid Marian. And, he enters himself in the tournament, of course, as like this crane. And Marion kind of recognizes him very, very quickly. He like gives her like a slight hint, but like she figures it out very quickly that that's him inside of the Karen or the crane outfit. And of course she, kind of roots for him and everything. And, after he wins the tournament, he's almost executed by Prince John. But of course, Maid Marian like begs Prince John not to do it. And, just like, please don't kill him. I love him type of a thing. And like, she thinks at this point in time, like Robin Hood's probably forgotten all about her. And like Robin Hood at this point in time also kind of thinks it's like, oh, Maid Marian's probably forgotten all about me. But, this moment proves that hasn't happened, that they have not forgotten about each other, that he entered this tournament to try to get a kiss from her so he could see her again. And she, of course, is begging Prince John to spare his life. And, via Little John holding a dagger at Prince John's back, he does let Robin Hood go. But we have the whole fight sequence that entails at the carnival type, festival type thing, archery festival, where, it's Prince John's forces versus like Robin and Little John, and like Maid Marian is there too. Like, Robin is like flirting with her and like talking about stuff while he's like sword fighting against all against the palace guards or whatever. Which is just hilarious watching that. It's just funny. And, so we have all of that. And like Maid Marian's not like standing by being idle. She's like at one point she's like throwing pies, I think, at the vultures and like causing distractions and stuff like that. Because like she's obviously, this version of Maid Marian is not like a sword fighting type, but she's just like, I'm just gonna throw pies at people to distract them, which is adorable. And Robin's like flirting with her and like making sure she stays safe and everything. And then, of course, they go into the forest and they have their little, like, roaming through the forest moment where they're just being very, adorable with each other and everything. And that whole little fun, beautifully drawn sequence there. And, of course, they dance when they're doing, when it's like them and the rest of the villagers are, like, having this little party and everything in the forest. They, like, dance there and everything. And, of course, the end of the movie is, of course, after they've defeated Prince John and, King James... Yeah, I think it's King James. Is it King James? I think so. The king returns and, Robin and Maid Marian are allowed to marry and everything. And the king's like, I have an outlaw for an in-law type of thing. And, Robin Hood is probably like pardoned from his, quote unquote crimes and everything because Prince John had been the one causing problems more than anything. And Robin Hood was actually trying to protect the people. And, they get married and everything. And, yeah, they head off on their little honeymoon, which is adorable. So I just always like Robin Hood and Maid Marian. I think they're adorable. And as I said, I'm trying to keep anything that involves, like, Once Upon a Time out of this, or any other Disney iterations of things kind of out of this. I'm just trying to go based on the animated stuff. Next up, we have another couple that has a fox in it that is kind of anthropomorphic type animals. We have Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde from Zootopia that came out in 2016. Wait. I know by technicality at the end of the movie, it is not 100% stated whether or not they are a couple. But since then, the directors and the writers have come out and stated that Judy and Nick are supposed to be a couple by the end of the movie. So I'm going off of that. If you want to argue with that, then just take this out and move everything up one slot. But in regards to my list, this is where Judy and Nick fall. And of course, we know throughout the whole course of the movie, the beginning of the movie is, of course, he tricks her into, of course, falling for his little con of like paying for the giant, popsicle and everything. And then, she ends up going after him when she realizes that, oh, he's been, actually, he conned me. And then like he, uses all this other stuff and does all these other problems and everything, like cons all these other people. And then of course we have, the Sly Bunny Dumb Fox sequence where she like literally tricks him into confessing, where she has it recorded on the pen, which is adorable. And of course we have, all these sequences where we see them like, he's kind of antagonistic to her before he sees what happens with her and, Mr. Big, where she, ends up, kind of like, charming Mr. Big. And, Nick is just flabbergasted by this. And, that's when he starts to turn a corner in regards to the way that he sees her. And of course, they're supposed to represent these two different points of view. As like Nick is this very cynical, very skeptical, very, glass half empty type of person who, always sees like the bad side of the world and everything like that. Whereas Judy is supposed to be, this representation of this very optimistic character that wants to try to do what she can to make things better in the world. Even if it's just a little bit, she wants to do what she can to make it better. So we have that, but what else we see is, of course, after they have the interaction with the jaguar that ends up attacking them because he goes feral, is, Judy saved Nick and everything, during that whole sequence. And then he sees the way that she's treated by the other police officers, by Chief Bogo, and that Chief Bogo is just like, handing your badge and everything like that. And, that's when Nick then stands up to Chief Bogo and he's just like, no. You said she had 48 hours to try to solve this case. And I still count that there's, 16, 18, whatever hours left. However many hours left. Therefore, she's still on the case. So we're going to go. And, they head off. And then, of course, they're on like the tram thing that's taking them to, the next place that they need to go. And they have the moment where he explains to her kind of his childhood about, yeah, I used to be like you when I was a kid. I, this optimistic, wanted to help people, wanted to, believe in people and everything. And of course, he has the whole traumatic thing that I would admit is traumatic with what happens with him and the junior scouts and everything, where they put the muzzle on him and everything and say that like, oh, a fox will never be able to be, never be able to be a part of this or whatever. And like, so we have that whole sequence there where they kind of connect with that and everything. And the other moment that we see between the two of them is, of course, after they've, figured out what's going on with, all the animals going feral, where they find them and they think that they've solved part of the case, with finding all these animals in the hospital and everything that, where Mayor Lionheart has been putting them. We have the moment between the two of them where Judy, gives him the pen that has the recording on it because she's given him this, application to fill out to try to, join the police. And, Nick tried to help her in regards to like encouraging her to go and do the press conference and everything. But of course, we still have to have, that moment where like they hit the brick wall where, Judy says stuff in the press conference that then Nick says, so is that what you actually believe? In regards to, you think that I could go feral, that any, that like I could go feral, but like a bunny couldn't go feral type of thing. And Judy, of course, ends up, we have that sequence where, they kind of, their friendship kind of stops. And, later on after she goes home and she interacts with her parents and realizes that, oh, even a bunny can go feral, she goes back and she finds where Nick is. And she does, the whole apology that I just love, where she's just like, I'm sorry, I was a dumb bunny. And I'm just, I just need you to help me finish this case. And then you can just go back to hating me and it's fine. And, it's like Nick is pretty much ready to forgive her after, the 24 hours with the recording and everything. And he's just like, yeah, I'll forgive you. It's fine. But, I'm still going to hold on to this recording for 24 hours and everything of you saying that you're a dumb bunny and everything as like payback for what happened. Which is just adorable between the two of them. And what we see from there is when, they end up then fully solving the case. And, we have the moment where they are trapped in the museum by Bellwether and her, like, sheep herd, whatever thing. But we have the moment where, Judy has to put a lot of trust in Nick for the fact that she's literally going to let him bite her neck in order to make this work, to make it appear that Nick went feral and to get, Bellwether to confess. And Judy has to put a lot of trust in Nick in that moment. I'm like, Nick has to put some trust in her too, but she has to put a lot of trust in him. And she does, and of course it pays off because, he does end up biting her around the neck and making it, pretend like he, killed her, injured her to the point where she's not going to be able to do anything against Bellwether at that point in time, playing that up. But, Nick, he didn't hurt her obviously, but like, that worked out great and they got their plan to work well. And then at the end of the movie is, of course, Nick is now like a police officer, the first fox that they've had in the department. And, after that, it's, oh, now they're, paired up together all the time and everything. And, when they're driving around in the giant police Hummer cruiser type thing at the end of the movie, trying to find the speedster, Nick and Judy are just like, kind of, bantering back and forth. And she goes, and he goes like, oh, you love me anyway. And she's like, do I love you? Yes, I do. And that's just still like one of my favorite moments in the movie. It's just like, yeah, I love you type of thing. And it is confirmed by the directors that yes, they are supposed to be a couple. As I stated, if you have a problem with that, then take them out of the list and pop everything up one layer. But the other adorable moment was, of course, later on at the end of the movie when like the whole, the try everything sequence at the end of the movie with Gazelle singing and everything. Like they're like obviously kind of like on a date at the concert, which is adorable. Like the two of them dancing together. Next up, we have our top two. Okay, so number 2 on the list. We had their son earlier on the list. We have Lady and the Tramp as number 2 on this list. So obviously the whole concept for Lady and the Tramp is, of course, guy from the right or guy from the wrong side of the tracks, girl from the right side of the tracks, kind of a play up, Aristocats is a little bit of a play up on that as well, obviously, and Scamp is guy from the right side of the tracks, girl from the wrong side of the tracks type of thing, so it's a flip-flop thing. But with Lady and the Tramp, it is obviously, Tramp and Lady first interact after Lady's had this, moment where like Jacques and Trusty kind of explain to her what a baby is. And, Tramp shows up and he's like, oh, well, that's not really what a baby is. It'll like result in all this other problems and everything, that you'll just have this horrible time with the baby around and everything. And like, so they have that whole interaction, and then like he wanders off and leaves after they have this not very good first interaction. And then, of course, the next time that they meet is after she's had like this muzzle put on her at the pet store by the guy that was by Aunt Sarah when she took Lady there after the whole incidents with the cats that are horrible little demonstrative animals in regards to those 2 specific Siamese cats. Not all cats are that way, but they are. And what ends up happening is Lady runs out of the pet store, and then she's chased by these other street dogs, and the Tramp is the one that shows up and like saves her and like gets the fights off the rest of the street dogs, and then he takes her to the zoo so that way they can get the muzzle off of her. And of course, they find the beaver, and the beaver like snips the muzzle off of her and everything, and makes it so that way she's free and everything. And then I like the adorable bit where it's just like, the beaver says something about like, we didn't talk about cost, and like Lady's the one that instantly like falls into like the way that Tramp has been pulling off the scam. She goes, it's a free sample, and like Tramp is just instantly like, okay, she figured it out, we're good moment. And like it's like it's a free sample type thing for for the beaver to have, of course. And they head, Tramp and Lady head off, and then they have like this nice little interaction of a day where, by the end of the day, like, she's kind of learning that like, oh, he goes to like all these different houses to get like food on different days of the week and everything. And then of course they have the Bella Notte sequence where they end up at, the Italian restaurant where they have like their spaghetti dinner, which is just adorable, and just one of my favorite little adorable romantic moments in Disney for the 2 of them. And they have that whole moment and everything, and the whole and then like them roaming around and just having a nice little romantic night, and then like they fall asleep on top of the hill overlooking the town. And then the next morning, when they're trying to Tramp tries to get them to like chase chickens and everything, and that doesn't go well. And then Lady ends up getting taken to the pound, and she has this horrible experience there, and she finds out that, oh, Tramp's been like had all these other like little lady love interests over the years and everything. It's not just her, all these other dogs, girlfriends, whatever that he's had. And one of the dogs in the pound says that, oh, he just needs to find, the tramp will eventually find, I don't remember how he phrased it. It's like Boris, the really big, like supposed to be a reference to like a Russian dog. And he's like, you know, someday the tramp will find, a nice girl that will just, be able to give him, the home that he's always wanted type of a thing. The love and the home that he's always wanted. And that's supposed to be implying that that's supposed to be Lady. But that'll also be like, they also imply that that'll also be like what gets Tramp caught. Which, of course, Lady doesn't want to happen. And, of course, she's taken home. And, that night, the Tramp shows up and he, like, apologizes to her. And she, like, kind of, like, sends him on his way after she kind of, like, chews him out for, like, all the other girls. And I kind of look at this, and it took me a little while to realize this, but, now that I'm older, I realize it was, like, part of this is, yeah, Lady's still kind of annoyed that, like, he left her there to get, didn't help make sure that she didn't get taken by the, by the pound. And, that he's, like, had all these other girls in the past type of a thing, flirted with all these other girls and everything. But it's also, I see it as her hearing the other of, like, Boris or whatever his name was, like, saying that, like, this is be, like, Tramp's weakness will be this. And she doesn't want to see Tramp get caught by the pound and taken and like put to sleep. Basically, she doesn't want to see that happen. And so we have that whole moment there where she, like, tells him to leave, and like he does, and like Jock and Trusty leave. And then the rat shows up, of course, and she ends up having to, Tramp comes back, and he's the one that ends up going into the house and like killing the rat and everything and saving the baby from the rat. Which, why the rat wants to go after the baby is completely beyond me, but whatever. It's an evil rat, sure. And Tramp's the one that kills the rat, and of course he's taken away by the pound, by the dog catchers, and of course Lady is the one that ends up like running after him. Well, Jacques and Tracy are the ones that run after him to try to stop the carriage, so that way Lady and Jim Deere can like show up and be able to say, oh no, Tramp was trying to like protect the baby and everything. And of course, at the end of the movie is, of course, we cut to Christmas, and, Lady and Tramp are obviously together. He's been adopted into the family, and, they have like their 4 puppies, Scamp and his 3 sisters, at the end of the movie. So we have like that nice family moment. And then in Lady and the Tramp 2, we have these other moments where we have Lady and the Tramp, like Lady comforting Tramp at times or giving him advice. And one of the moments is when Tramp has been looking out the window down at like where Scamp is in the backyard after he's caused a lot of problems inside the house, and he's kind of out there being punished. And Lady comes up and she's like talking to him, and like the sequence is just like beautifully animated. I mean, like, I know some people say that like, oh, sometimes like the sequel movies, like they didn't do as good of an animation job. I would still say they're still great, wonderfully animated. And like they have the beautiful stained glass window in the background of this window, or the background of the scene. And we have Lady and Tramp up there, and like it's just Lady and Tramp are still like Tramp says something along the lines of oh, how does he phrase it? Something along the lines of, I had you, Peg, because he always called her Peg, or Pidge. Pidge is what he called her, Pigeon, Pidge. And it's just the way of him doing a whole bunch of, he's like, I went through a lot of things, but, I came out on the other side of it because of you, because I found you. And that's one of those moments where you realize that, because throughout the course of the movie, we also hear from, I want to say Spike is the name of the lead junkyard dog. I'm probably wrong on that. If I'm wrong on that on his name, I'm sorry. But he ends up, he says that, Tramp left, left them because of, for the cushy pillow life, him for the cushy pillow life. And Tramp is just like, I left because I fell in love. He tells us to Scamp and, the other ones at the same time. Buster is the name of the other of the King Junkyard dog, not Spike. It's Buster. Sorry. Don't know why that took me so long to remember, but it's Buster, not Spike. But what ends up happening is, is when he's confronting Scamp and he's just like, I left because I fell in love with your mother, and Buster must have just gotten jealous. And, it's just like, I left because she was, she meant more to me than, this. And it gave me a home, and it gave me you and your sisters type of a thing, and it gave me a family. And so we have that moment where it's like Tramp is just basically like reaffirming how much he loves Lady, to give all of that up for her and everything. And I always make this joke when it comes to Hallmark movies that, my mom really likes Hallmark movies. And admittedly, I will indulge in them every now and then, or like the romantic, guy meets girl, issue happens, they do fall in love, then issue happens and they have a fight, and then end of the movie, like resolution of, if you had said this thing in the beginning, this probably wouldn't have happens. But, I kind of look at this a little bit as, I always make this joke when it comes to like Hallmark movies where it's always like, oh, there's like this prince, and like he falls in love with like this regular girl via insert whatever reason that they end up meeting, and then like she has to prove that she's worthy enough to be like his princess / queen in the end or whatever. Whereas like as far as I'm aware, there's not any Hallmark movies entirely that are based around the whole of princess meets regular guy, and then he has to prove that he's good enough for her. Or the moment of, the flip flop where it's, oh, the prince has to like, the mother of the prince is just like, the mother or the whatever, the prince is just like, either you can go and be with her and like give up everything that you have here of your royalty and your status and everything, or you can stay here in life of luxury, or you can go and be with her and lose it all. And like the guy chooses to like, well, screw you, mom, I'm gonna go be with the woman that I love type of moment, like that. Like, I don't know, maybe there's a Hallmark movie like that about that, I don't know. But it's like those types of things, we don't see that often in Hallmark movies. And that's kind of what happens here when it comes to like Tramp gave up all of this quote unquote freedom that he had to go and be with Lady. And obviously they're very happy. We have finally reached the top couple on this Disney rankings list for the animals. Couple number 1. And if you've been following along, if you had like a weird checklist to figure out what couples I've talked about that I haven't talked about yet, number 1 on this list, Kovu and Kiara from Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, that came out in 1998. So, I will have to say that out of all the Disney sequels, Lion King 2 is my favorite. And I have always loved the movie. I mean, like, it came out when I was 5. I've grown up with it. Same thing with, like, Lion King itself and, like, so many of the other movies on this list, barring, Zootopia, which came out when I was, full grown. But like all these other movies all came out when I was a kid or were already out, and I grew up watching them. And Kovu and Kiara were always just this couple that I always just thought were so wonderful. And like, people say when it comes to like Lion King, like Disney has admitted it, that like Lion King itself is like partially based on Hamlet. Yeah. It was described as like Bambi in Africa with Hamlet and Elton John music. Okay. It was like one of the initial explanations for like what they were doing with like, Lion King. But with Lion King 2, there's clearly elements of it being based on Romeo and Juliet in regards to, Kiara is Juliet, Kovu is Romeo, the Simba's Pride, or, there's the Montagues and the Capulets and everything. And, the two sides kind of like despise each other, of course, because of course Zira, who's Kovu's mother, had been, like Scar's like right-hand lioness or whatever, supposedly been in love with Scar. And, that, Scar had like chosen Kovu to be his heir before Simba showed up and like kicked, defeated Scar and like kicked the rest of them out of the Pride Lands. There's a whole theory there in regards to why they were kicked out initially. The basic theory is that like they killed that Zira is the one that killed Simba and Nala's initial cub, Kion, that is the little baby lion at the end of the first movie, that she killed him, and then Simba like exiled her and the rest of her, her group from the Pride Lands. That's the basic gist of that. But that's not really here or there in regards to this, why I like Kovu and Kiara. But what of course we see is that, like, Kiara is, the princess of the Pride Lands. And, one day she goes out like exploring, and she ends up, exploring a little too far into the Outlands, which is where, of course, Zira and her pride live. And Kiara ends up running into this young male cub, Kovu. And, like, initially they kind of like don't get along, and then they end up having to like deal with a bunch of crocodiles because they land in an area, in a swampy-ish area that has a bunch of crocodiles in it. And then they end up, she kind of saves him and he kind of saves her, and they end up escaping away from the crocodiles. And, from there, it kind of like shifts a little bit, and they get to be a little bit more playful with each other. And then right when they're about to like kind of just start playing and bonding, that's when Simba and Nala and like Timon and Pumbaa and like their group show up. And like when Zira shows up to get Kovu. And, Kovu and Kara just kind of see firsthand how much their parents despise each other. And for reasons that are kind of left unsaid, as I said. And what ends up happening is Kovu, Zira takes Kovu back, and like, Simba takes Kiara back. And, they kind of are, it's like, you can't be around that cub anymore and everything. And it's just like, but we were just playing type of a thing. And I just, wanted to be a friend with, friends with them type of thing. And of course, Kiara and Kovu, like, they don't see each other again for a long time. Although in Lion King, the Lion Guard, there is an episode, and I was very happy when I first heard that they were going to be doing the Lion Guard, and that they were stating like when it takes place, because like pretty much all of the Lion Guard takes place between the end of Simba's Pride, or like the not the end of Simba's Pride, but like the moment where after like Simba, when Kovu and Kiara meet and everything, like there's like a time jump between when they meet when they're cubs and then when they meet again when they're older, and like pretty much all of the Lion Guard takes place within that time frame. In regards to focusing more on Kion, which is fine. But one of the things that we see is that in the Lion Guard, there is an episode where Kion and the Lion Guard end up going into... Well, Kion goes into the Outlands, and he ends up interacting with these lion cubs, and one of them is Kovu, and the other one is Vitani, and the other one is Nuka, and like he sees Zira, and like they interact, and like Kion reveals that he is Kiara's sister, and Kovu says, Kiara, could you get us into the Pride Lands, kind of showing that like he hasn't like forgotten about her, which I just like. And like that episode doesn't end up resulting in much. It's like Kion kind of learns about Zira and everything, about certain things that have happened and everything, and like knows that like maybe Kovu knows who Kiara is, but like it kind of sets at the basis that like Kovu knows who Kiara, or Kion knows who Kovu and Vitani and Zira are, and Nuka, which comes back into play later at the end of the series, at the end of Lion Guard, which I'll go over. But what we see is, in Lion King 2, when Simba sends Kiara off on her first hunt, that's when Zira starts her plan of, she has Kovu rescue Kiara from this fire, and then kind of like find a way of like weaving his way into the Pride, being invited back to Pride Rock and everything. And, the whole plan is, the closer Kovu gets to the daughter, the closer he gets to Simba. And then once he has Simba alone, then he can kill him and such. And, that's Zira's whole plan and everything. And initially, Kovu was very much, yeah, I'll go along with the plan, because he was basically raised that way, raised to be Scar's heir and everything. And Nuka does specifically state that Scar was not Kovu's father. That is explicitly stated, because if not, then it's like, oh, he looks so much like Scar, he has to be Scar's son, but then that would mean that him and Kiara are technically like, second cousins or something like that. But no, they specifically state that Kovu is not Scar's child, not Scar's cub. Nuka, I think, is hinted to be Scar's cub, but I don't think that they ever, I don't remember if they explicitly state that at any given time. But what we see throughout the course of that part is, Kovu and Kiara kind of start to get to know each other a little bit better, and like Kovu kind of has to learn to start loosening up because, he tries to start teaching Kiara how to hunt a little bit more, which is paradoxical because in the Lion Guard we see Kiara learning how to hunt. In and of itself, we see multiple episodes where she's learning how to hunt, being taught by, Nala and everything. But what ends up happening is, they're trying to learn how, he's trying to help her teach her how to hunt and everything. And then they end up having this interaction with Timon and Pumbaa where they just kind of like, Kiara kind of starts to show him what it's like to have fun. And then like, they end up just having like a fun, and then they end up going and they end up like laying on the grass and like looking up at the stars and like looking at the constellations and everything. And, that's when they kind of have this moment. And, we see Simba and Nala off to the side at one point because, like, Simba's been keeping a very close eye on Kovu because he doesn't know if he should trust Kovu. And Nala's just like, maybe you should give him a chance type of thing. But, like, we have the whole, with Kovu and Kiara, we have the whole Upendi sequence, which I love. And, it's, Rafiki singing to them and, like, showing this, Technicolor and, like, everybody's in love and, like, all these animal couples and everything. And, like, just, like, helping Kiara and Kovu kind of go along and fall in love with each other, which is adorable. And what ends up happening is, of course, when Simba tries to show Kovu like like a burned a recent like a brush fire area that's been burned to ash and everything, probably the area where that like Kovu ended up saving Kiara. Simba and Kovu are like attacked by Zira and her her pride, and like Simba thinks that Kovu like tricked him and everything, and he didn't. Well, he's not intending to trick him anymore because Kovu literally chooses to like he had been working on a speech that morning to tell Kiara, it's just like, Zira had a plot and I was part of it, but I don't want to be anymore. And it's because I love you type of thing. And that's like that sequence that we have there. And, when Kovu is exiled by Simba, because, Simba thinks that Kovu has been part of, Zira's plot this entire time, which technically he has, but he changed his mind and he didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And, Simba, banishes Kovu. And, Kiara tries to beg her father to reconsider. And then, of course, she escapes, which pretty much this part is a reference to, of course, in, Simba, in, Romeo and Juliet, where, like, Romeo, is, like, banished from the city. And then, it's a reference to the fact that, like, Kiara is supposed to be kind of like a Julia, but thankfully they don't die in this aspect. It's not like the star-crossed lovers of, oh, they're going to die. That was just always one of the stupid things that I found out about like Romeo and Juliet. Just like, they are so stupid as teenagers. Beautifully went and play stupid teenagers. And yeah, there's a little bit of that when it comes to Kovu and Kiara as well, and I will admit that's kind of like one of the things that's in play when it comes to them. But what we see happen is, Kovu and Kiara, Kiara escapes, and like Kovu and Kiara are having this, she's looking for him, and like we have the whole, love will find a way sequence, which is just another one of my favorite love songs in all of Disney. And, the whole sequence, and they end up, finding each other, and they're together again and everything. And we have the moment where it's like where their reflections look like they are like two halves of a whole type of thing. And of course they decide it's like we could run away together and start a pride all our own. And like it's like Kiara's like, no, we have to go back, we have to stop this war. And they do go back and they do stop the war between their two prides. And in the end of it, it is Kovu and Kiara are married. And we cut to, in the Lion Guard, there's like Kion and his group like leave at one point during the Lion Guard. and they have to go to find something that's supposed to help Kion, make Kion better. He got hurt very badly, or something's going on, and they need to fix Kion. And they make their way back to the Pride Land, so that's why they're not there during like that part of the Lion King 2 section. And they get back and they're like very surprised because they see that like they had received word from one of their allies that like, oh, Zira and her her pride are going to like attack the Pride Lands and everything. And they get back and like they see Kiara and Kovu and Vitani, and he Kion thinks that like Kovu is trying to like attack Kiara. But he's not. Like Kiara like gets between Kion and Kovu to try to stop Kion, and then of course they get the whole explanation and everything as to what actually happened. And like Kion's just like, oh, so you're my brother-in-law now, basically. Yeah, okay, got it, duly noted, we're good, type of thing. So that's just funny. But this video took a little bit longer than I thought it would, but okay. I have reached the end of the Disney couples, or the Disney animal couples. I still have one more to record, but it'll go up before this, and that's I still have to record the Princess Disney couples, but that'll be like the first one that actually goes up on Valentine's Day itself. So I thank you very much for watching. I thank you very much for watching. I hope that you have a nice rest of your day, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. Bye. What? Kovu, Kiara, together? This is the plan? Are you crazy? This will never work. Oh, Mufasa, you've been up there too long. Your head is in the clouds.